Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 21 of War and Peace. Chapter 21. There was now no one in the reception room except Prince Vasily and the oldest princess, who were sitting under the portrait of Catherine the Great and talking eagerly. As soon as they saw Pierre and his companion, they became silent, and Pierre thought he saw the princess hiding something as she whispered, "I can't bear the sight of that woman." "Katisha's had tea served in the drawing-room," said Prince Vasily to Anna Mikhailovna. "Go and take something, my poor Anna Mikhailovna, or you will not hold out." To Pierre, he said nothing, merely giving his arm a sympathetic squeeze below the shoulder. Pierre went with Anna Mikhailovna into the small drawing-room. "There is nothing so refreshing after a sleepless night as a cup of this delicious Russian tea," Lorraine was saying, with an air of restrained animation, as he stood sipping tea from a delicate Chinese cup before a table on which tea and a cold supper were laid in the small circular room. Around the table, all who were at Count Bezukhov's house that night had gathered to fortify themselves. Pierre well remembered this small circular drawing-room with its mirrors and little tables. During balls given at the house, Pierre, who did not know how to dance, had liked sitting in this room to watch the ladies who, as they passed through in their ball dresses with diamonds and pearls on their bare shoulders, looked at themselves in the brilliantly lighted mirrors which repeated the reflections several times. Now this same room was dimly lighted by two candles. On one small table, tea things and supper dishes stood in disorder, and in the middle of the night a motley throng of people sat there, not merrymaking, but somberly whispering, and betraying by every word and movement that they not one of them forgot what was happening and what was about to happen in the bedroom. Pierre did not eat anything, though he would very much have liked to. He looked inquiringly at his monitress, and saw that she was again going on tiptoe to the reception room where they had left Prince Vasily and the eldest princess. Pierre concluded that this also was essential, and after a short interval followed her. Anna Mikhailovna was standing beside the princess, and they were both speaking in excited whispers. "Permit me, princess, to know what is necessary and what is not necessary," said the younger of the two speakers, evidently in the same state of excitement as when she had slammed the door of her room. "But, my dear princess," answered Anna Mikhailovna blandly but impressively, blocking the way to the bedroom and preventing the other from passing, "won't this be too much for poor uncle at a moment when he needs repose? Worldly conversation at a moment when his soul is already prepared?" Prince Vasily was seated in an easy chair in his familiar attitude, with one leg crossed high above the other. His cheeks, which were so flabby that they looked heavier now, were twitching violently, but he wore the air of a man little concerned in what the two ladies were saying. "Come, my dear Anna Mikhailovna, let Katish do as she pleases. You know how fond the Count is of her." "I don't even know what is in that paper," said the younger of the two ladies, addressing Prince Vasily, and pointing to an inlaid portfolio she held in her hand. "All I know is that this real will is in the writing table, and this is a paper he has forgotten." She tried to pass Anna Mikhailovna, but the latter sprang so as to bar her path. "I know, my dear, kind princess," said Anna Mikhailovna, seizing the portfolio so firmly that it was plain she would not let go easily. "Dear princess, I beg and implore you, have some pity on him. J'ai vu un Roger." The princess did not reply. Their efforts in the struggle for the portfolio were the only sounds audible, but it was evident that if the princess did speak, her words would not be flattering to Anna Mikhailovna. Though the latter held on tenaciously, her voice lost none of its honeyed firmness and softness. "Pierre, my dear, come here. I think you would not be out of place in a family consultation. Is it not so, Prince?" "Why don't you speak, cousin?" suddenly shrieked the princess so loud that those in the drawing room heard her and were startled. Why do you remain silent when heaven knows who permits herself to interfere, making a scene on the very threshold of a dying man's room? Intriguer! She hissed viciously, and tugged with all her might at the portfolio. But Anna Mikhalovna went forward a step or two to keep her hold on the portfolio, and changed her grip. Prince Vasily rose. "Ugh," said he, with reproach and surprise. "This is absurd. Come, let go, I tell you." The princess let go. "And you too." But Anna Mikhalovna did not obey him. "Let go, I tell you. I will take the responsibility. I myself will go and ask him. Does that satisfy you?" "But, Prince," said Anna Mikhalovna, "after such a solemn sacrament, allow him a moment's peace. Here, Pierre, tell him your opinion," said she, turning to the young man, who, having come quite close, was gazing with astonishment at the angry face of the princess, which had lost all dignity, and at the twitching cheeks of Prince Vasily. "Remember that you will answer for the consequences," said Prince Vasily severely. "You don't know what you're doing." "Vile woman!" shouted the princess, darting unexpectedly at Anna Mikhalovna and snatching the portfolio from her. Prince Vasily bent his head and spread out his hands. At this moment, that terrible door, which Pierre had watched so long, and which had always opened so quietly, burst noisily open and banged against the wall, and the second of the three sisters rushed out, wringing their hands. "What are you doing?" she cried vehemently. "He is dying, and you leave me alone with him?" Her sister dropped the portfolio. Anna Mikhalovna, stooping, quickly caught up the object of contention and ran into the bedroom. The eldest princess and Prince Vasily recovered themselves, followed her. A few minutes later the eldest sister came out with a pale, hard face, again biting her underlip. At the sight of Pierre her expression showed an irrepressible hatred. "Yes, now you may be glad," said she. "This is what you have been waiting for." And bursting into tears, she hid her face in her handkerchief and rushed from the room. Prince Vasily came next. He staggered to the sofa on which Pierre was sitting and dropped onto it, covering his face with his hand. Pierre noticed that he was pale and that his jaw quivered and shook as if in ague. I don't even know what that word is. "Ah, my friend," said he, taking Pierre by the elbow, and there was in his voice a sincerity and weakness Pierre had never observed in it before. "How often we sin, how much we deceive, and all for what? I am near 60, dear friend. I too, all will be in death. Death is awful." And he burst into tears. Anna Mikhalovna came out last. She approached Pierre with slow, quiet steps. "Pierre," she said. Pierre gave her an inquiring look. She kissed the young man on the forehead, wetting him with her tears. Then after a pause she said, "He is no more." Pierre looked at her over his spectacles. "Come, I will go with you. Try to weep. Nothing gives relief as tears." She led him into the dark drawing room, and Pierre was glad no one could see his face. Anna Mikhalovna left him, and when she returned, he was fast asleep with his head on his arm. In the morning, Anna Mikhalovna said to Pierre, "Yes, my dear, this is a great loss for us all, not to speak of you. But God will support you. You are young, and are now, I hope, in command of an immense fortune. The will has not yet been opened. I know you well enough to be sure that this will not turn your head, but it imposes duties on you, and you must be a man." Pierre was silent. "Perhaps later on I may tell you, my dear boy, that if I had not been there, only God knows what would have happened. You know, Uncle promised me only the day before yesterday not to forget Boris, but he had no time. I hope, my dear friend, you will carry on your father's wish?" Pierre understood nothing of all this, and coloring shyly, looked in silence at Princess Anna Mikhalovna. After her talk with Pierre, Anna Mikhalovna returned to the Rostovs and went to bed. On waking in the morning, she told the Rostovs and all her acquaintances the details of Count Bezukhov's death. She said the Count had died as she herself would wish to die, that his end was not only touching, but edifying. As to the last meeting between father and son, it was so touching that she could not think of it without tears, and did not know which had behaved better during those awful moments. The father, who so remembered everything and everybody at last, and had spoken such pathetic words to the son, or Pierre, whom it had been pitiful to see, so stricken was he with grief, though he tried hard to hide it in order not to sadden his dying father. It is painful, but it does one good. "It uplifts the soul to see such men as the old Count and his worthy son," said she. Of the behavior of the eldest princess and Prince Vasily she spoke disapprovingly, but in whispers, and as a great secret. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 22 of War and Peace. I will now follow it, 21. I will now follow it with my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 21. Clarissa Explains It All. In Samuel Richardson's Clarissa, the eponymous tragic hero of the novel finds herself in a situation where she must either betray her family or betray her heart. Her family, the Harlows, seeking that ever-elusive ladder to upward social mobility within the sclerotic world of Georgian Britain, desires to marry her off to a man and trade for some of that man's property, which will, in turn, finally empower the Harlows to join the ranks of the British aristocracy. Clarissa is skeptical. She doesn't share her family's conviction that wealth and class distinction leads to any sense of sustainable well-being. Happiness and riches, she writes to her friend about the marriage proposal, are two things and very seldom meet together. Meeting together in the reception room of the Bazukov estate, Anna Mikhailovna and Katich test Clarissa's theory as they fight over possession of a portfolio. This portfolio, you'll recall, contains the old Count's papers petitioning for the legitimation of Pierre. If the Emperor agrees to this, Pierre stands to inherit one of the largest fortunes in Russia. If somehow the Emperor never learns of this document, say Katich steals it, for instance, then the Bazukov fortune goes to Vasily and Katich. This struggle over the portfolio is a nasty one. Katich in particular is quite angry and ugly about it. Anna Mikhailovna isn't that much better. In helping Pierre, she's really helping herself by opening him yet another unearned income stream for her son Boris. Pierre will feel obliged to her for all her services, after all. This ugly physical struggle over possession of the portfolio between Anna Mikhailovna and Katich betrays a deeper, corrosive agitation of the mind, brought about by laboring to build and maintain riches. Don't forget that these are members of the Russian aristocracy. They're already well-to-do by relative standards. And yet here they are, at each other's throats in a rage. To quote the poet, "Those who got money better watch out for the money-hungry." In the end, Anna Mikhailovna wins the battle for the portfolio. Katich shrieks and, sobbing, scampers off. Prince Vasily, realizing his defeat, sits alongside Pierre and, ignorant of yesterday's meditation, begins to cry because he is old like the Count and will one day soon die himself. In the next room, that's exactly what Count Bazukov does. Wealth is not a bad thing in itself. Attachment to wealth, on the other hand, can be quite distressful. Just look at how awful the characters in today's chapter behave. Surely the feelings provoked in this chapter will linger in their minds well into the future. This is not a way to live. Seneca, a very wealthy man himself, understood how to properly approach a relationship with money. Daily meditation. Everything that comes to us from chance is unstable, and the higher it rises, the more liable it is to fall. Moreover, what is doomed to perish brings pleasure to no one. Very wretched, therefore, and not merely short, must the life of those be who work hard to get what they must work harder to keep. By great toil they attain what they wish, and with anxiety hold what they have attained. Meanwhile, they take no account of time that will never return. Seneca, on the shortness of life. All right, so that concludes my reading and reflection on chapter 21 of War and Peace. I really hope you liked it. Thanks for listening today. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. Links below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow, we'll be reading chapter 22 of War and Peace. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.